From the people who ruined Superman, whose names don't rhyme with Zack Snyder, comes Santa Claus The Movie. And it's the first of two family-friendly Christmas movies we're reviewing that starts with the festive event of watching Santa Claus die. Join us as we jump into this 90-minute movie whose main plot doesn't actually begin until well over the hour mark.
Wouldn't take you long, would it?
Andy, we are reviewing two Christmas movies, two Santa Claus movies. The whole Santa Claus dying thing was not something I planned, it's just something that happened. Yeah, we are Santa Claus The Movie. What did you think of this?
Yeah, I mean, this is a childhood favourite. I'd say it's a key childhood Christmas movie. So I do have fond memories of it that I can't quite detach because I know the movie's not that good, but I like it anyway. Whilst doing this, I watched it whilst looking after my son. It's the first time he's seen it, and he was absolutely enchanted by it.
Yeah.
Everything was, wow, what's that?
See, you've cheated. You've cheated this movie because you actually watched it with a child, whereas I watched it at like 1 o'clock in the morning going, this is shit. This is shit. What's going on? This is shit.
It stinks. It stinks.
Yes, Mr. Sherman, everything stinks.
I watched it with the key demographic.
Yeah, I mean, I have a very similar experience with yourself. Like, I grew up with this film. This was one of, like, my mum's favourites. In fact, when I told her I was reviewing it, she said, I hope it's only good things. I'm sorry, Mum. For me, I mostly remember that, like, first half hour of the film. Mm-hmm. The Santa Claus origin stuff, which feels like it should be a movie in and of itself.
Yeah.
And the John Lithgow stuff, like, he's the main villain of the film, for example.
Yeah.
He is literally the main villain. He doesn't appear until 1 hour, 1 minute into this hour and 40-minute film. Like you say, it is shit, but it does have its charm. But it does have that kind of, like, Superman 3 thing going on, where it feels like it's a cobbled collection of, like, sketches and vignettes with an afterthought given towards story.
Yeah, although, thinking about it, I think what they have done is try to treat it in exactly the same manner like they treated Superman the movie.
Right.
And I feel like they've tried to structure it in a very similar way.
Yes, I get that, yeah.
Because, yeah, much like Superman the movie, this covers the first, 10 minutes, cover his origins, and then it moves on to another part of Santa's life, or Superman's life. And then at the, 40-minute mark, it moves into the film proper with all the establishing characters. And even with, say, John Lithgow's character, he's very much an analogue for Lex Luthor. But on a quality level, it has much more in common with Superman 3. Although, having said that, I actually think it's a better film than Superman 3.
I would agree. I'd say it's still more coherent.
Yeah.
Than Superman 3 in terms of what its through line is as well.
Yeah.
But just like Superman, Santa seems to live next door to the Fortress of Solitude.
Yes.
It's like they just reused the same the same map painting, but just erased a little bit out of it. Yeah, so there's a couple of things that I did want to speak about as well, like in regards to this, right? One of the things that I really like about this film, because I want to start on a positive, I really do.
Yeah.
The bit that I loved as a kid was everything to do with him discovering Santa's workshop.
Yeah.
And all of that. The set is fantastic. The look of it, there's a vibrancy, there's a colour. I watched it in 4K and I forgot how colourful this movie is, and it looks great. But yeah, we've also got like this weird opening though, where we have Uncle Claus in the first 5 minutes when we see Santa before he was Santa, and he's just this guy, Uncle Claus, who goes around villages in, I don't know where it is. It's like Sweden or somewhere like that. It's like some sort of Scandinavian place or Eastern. Oh, it's like Eastern European.
Yeah.
Hamburg. But he goes around making toys for kids, and there's a line that really got me, and it's like, how does he have time to make all these toys? And Mrs. Claus responds like, oh, he makes time. It's his pleasure. Also, we haven't had sex in decades. I'm as dry as Egypt.
Isn't that as it should be?
Yeah.
And then obviously they die and everything like that, which is great. And then they come back. Now, the thing is about all of this is I can follow it because I know the kind of what Santa Claus is. But on another level, I was sat there going, what's going on? Where have these elves kind of materialized from? There's something vague nonsense about a prophecy.
Yeah.
But it's not like Superman in a way like, Superman comes from the planet Krypton, and there's a kind of mythology and a lore and a background that feels more structured. This feels a bit more formless, like everything just appears out of nowhere and, oh yeah, you're Santa, mate. We've decided, because you're childless and you give toys away, you're Santa.
Yeah.
As the prophecy once said, imagine how many people that they've cycled through to get to me. Lots of wrong-uns, I imagine. Yeah, we've been through an entire register.
We've been here for thousands of years.
We normally find out a year or two in after bestowing them with magical powers. There were the dark years where we accidentally gave Jimmy Savile his...
Oh, no.
He's childless and gives away presents. Is he Santa?
Then we had to dial the clock back a bit to find someone decent. But yeah, it's weird how they just kind of die in the snow. You kind of just have to think, is this all a life flashing before your eyes dream that they're having before they die?
Yeah.
It is very superhero-esque, though. Even with the prophecy and the Burgess Meredith character, who's pretty much the Marlon Brando casting analog in this film.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very vague, and it's one of those things where don't think about it for too long or you'll drive yourself crazy.
If you give extra kisses, you get bigger hugs.
I mean, I guess we should talk about as well Dudley Moore.
Yeah.
Dudley Moore's someone that I think people of the generation above us, not even the generation above us, like our parents, have a lot of fondness for, but I've never really seen that many Dudley Moore films, and this is in fact the only performance that I remember of him.
It's weird for me because I do, but I think it's just from what I was exposed to as a kid, because I watched this a lot, and I also had a Muppet television special.
Of course you had a Muppets television special with them on.
It was the Muppets Go to the Movies, and I think it was made about 1984, so literally the year before this.
Yeah.
So you would have looked the same age. So this is always the time that I associate with Dudley Moore, and it was guest starring Dudley Moore and Lily Tomlin. So I have a very strong grounding in those two actors through that TV special and Santa Claus the Movie, and I think later on I saw Arthur.
Yeah.
So I do have a fair understanding of Dudley Moore, although I haven't actually watched a ton of his earlier work with Peter Cook.
Something I want to mention is that particularly stood out to me in the second half of the film.
Yeah.
I mean, this is very late on, but also just as the John Lithgow villainous plotline is finally introduced. But he's a toy manufacturer. Mm-hmm. Do toy manufacturers answer to Congress?
Yes.
I'm busy. Of course I answer to Congress. Yeah, I think it's just because he's busy. He wouldn't go to any other hearing unless it was at Congress, because he's that self-important. Even though he seems to have one factory.
Yeah, and at that point, it does become very rooted in the 80s, and
yes.
It does kind of settle down as well.
And also, there's a weird... it's a very rare movie where the lead actor gets swapped halfway through. Because the first half of the film's focused on Santa, and then almost at the halfway point, it switches, and it's Dudley Moore's film from there on in. That's why it feels like two films.
And for me, though, that's the thing what Superman gets right, is it's still consistently about the same character throughout, whereas this isn't.
No.
That's what makes that disconnect feel very apparent. I like all the stuff with Santa, to be honest, if I'm very honest about it. I like all the stuff with Santa. I don't mind Dudley Moore. I really like him in the film. I think he's got a warmth. But I don't like anything to do with his whole character arc in the second half. It's just nonsense to me. And I kind of wish it wasn't set in the 80s as well, because it looks like, I don't know, there's an 80s tackiness to it as well.
Yeah.
And it makes me think of that at this time, Santa's going up against the Amiga and stuff like that. And it's you've got no chance with your fucking wooden tricycles and shit that you just seem to make every year. Every kid must have just a fuckload of little wooden tricycles that you get given year after year. It's oh, thanks, Santa. I'll just add it to the fucking wood for the stove.
It all ends up in that fireplace at the end of the day.
Could you imagine, dear Santa, this year, get me anything at all, other than a fucking wooden tricycle. I'm sick of the sight of them.
I feel like that's the issue with any Santa film that's set in modern times, because you always have to ask yourself, Like, where do the toys come from? Even something like Arthur Christmas, it never really explains where the toys are from. Like, they go into, like, all the delivery method and all that. But in terms of where the toys come from, when you get to modern times, it's less plausible. Whereas if you keep it in a historical setting, it feels more natural.
Yeah.
Having said that, I love the tackiness of the 80s setting. Like, for me, growing up as a kid, this was one of the 80s movies. It's weird, like, thinking about it now, like, when I was growing up watching this film would have only been about 6 or 7 years old, but it felt so old even when I was a little kid. Like, it's so 80s.
Yeah,
it's so rooted in that mid-80s period that even only 5 or 6 years after it was made, it felt really dated. But at the same time, I love it. And I love the crass, like, product placement of the McDonald's. Like, that seemed to be the thing in the mid-80s.
See, this is a film for you where the flaws are a feature.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like a comforting, like, security blanket.
Yeah.
Like, it just makes me feel warm inside, seeing this blatant and abrasive product placement.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so bizarre, like, how rooted I was in this film, because even when the little kid, is it Joe?
Like Edward Furlong Sr.
Are we learning yet?
But whenever I went to a buffet as a kid, I would imagine that I was Joe outside in the cold eating the food. It looked so delicious.
Oh, you poor child!
Yeah, but that was just me, like, role-playing in this film. I'm perhaps too close to this film to
you are.
Any kind of objective judgment.
I think you may be. This isn't the experience I was anticipating.
Don't you believe in Santa Claus?
Why should I? He never brought me anything.
Do people in this world know that Santa exists? Because, I mean, it's one of those things that maybe I shouldn't think about. I definitely shouldn't probe this any further. But I'm going to use my probing finger. And I just need to ask, like, at one point it seems that people are very aware that Santa Claus exists and these presents are from him. And at other times it's like John Lithgow's character is like, Santa doesn't exist or anything. Like, you know, like when he meets Dudley Moore's patch for the first time, it's like, Santa. It leaves me with, like, this inconsistency within the universe itself, where it's like I'm stuck between thinking, oh, this is a world where everybody knows that Santa exists. Also, if you get a shit toy from Santa, like you get your tricycle, but it falls apart, and it's like, oh no, that's really, really sad. Don't send it back to him. He gave you that for free, you prick.
You get automatically get put on the naughty list.
Yeah, it's like, that gets your fucking bloodline put on the naughty list.
And how do you get it there in the first place? You just chuck it up in the air or something. And also during that sequence, you know, when the school bus runs over that tricycle.
Oh yeah.
I'm pretty sure the kid's nearly in the path of the bus, like in the shot. Like
it's movie magic, darling.
Dodgy. Proper dodgy.
It's the 80s, mate. Anything went back then.
But yeah, it does definitely fall apart in the second half of the film. Even though I love its 80s, like, cheesy tackiness.
Yeah.
But the first half of the film I do quite like. And for me, when I think about Santa's Workshop, that set is the one I always go to. That for me is like the definitive Santa's Workshop. I think it must have been built on the 007 stage because they shot this at Pinewood. Because it's a massive set.
So many moving parts to it.
For me, it feels like a very believable setup for Santa's Workshop. So yeah, and also, like I say, because I feel like I am quite close to it. This is a film I do watch every Christmas.
I mean, this is the first time I've seen it since I was probably like 13.
But it's definitely one of those films that gets me in the Christmas mood, even though it's kind of not great.
And also, there are like a few like Christmas movies that end with a shot of a man who's about to suffocate and die in the depths of space. You know, just films the whole family can gather around and go, ha, ha, ha. Or conversely, that could be like a nice segue into Gravity. Yeah. If you started one right after the other, you could go straight from that point.
You want that opening shot of starting with him just flying off, and then it cuts to George Clooney.
Yeah. And what I might do is I might edit Gravity so that the debris that hits the side of the space station is John Lithgow.
I'd be surprised if someone hasn't done it already.
Yeah.
Someone's got to have done a Santa Claus The Movie, the Gravity mashup.
Well, they did a Superman one, and that works really well. Okay, so I do have some trivia for you, Andy, as well.
Yes.
And there isn't much trivia for this film. I did find a few pieces. but one of these facts is untrue, and the other facts are true. I want you to pick out the one that I've made up.
What?
So the film was originally planned as a musical, but given the decline of popularity of musicals, the decision was made mid-development to excise almost all musical elements. John Carpenter was first choice to direct, but he did not get along with the Salkinds over certain aspects of his script. Rudolph was originally planned to be part of the film's reindeer lineup, but the real-life reindeer cast in the role had a fatal allergic reaction to the paint used to colour its nose.
Oh no. I'm going to say the last one.
Yeah, that's the one I made up.
I knew about John Carpenter.
Yeah, John Carpenter's a crazy one.
Can you imagine John Carpenter's Santa Claus the Movie?
Begins with them coming across the remnants of Outpost 31. You know? The last thing I want to mention is that there was a line that got me, and that was after Patch had created these lollipops that make people fly, which, amazing. Mm-hmm. He says, for the next Christmas, do you want me to create more of them? And John Lithgow says, well, flying lollipops are yesterday's news.
Lollipops? No. No, we did that already. That's yesterday's news.
And it made me instantly think, oh yeah, because the flying boiled sweet market is one that's very saturated at this time, I'm sure. Everybody else is doing it. What the fuck? He's like, it's yesterday's news. Nobody's going to want to buy one of our lollipops that make you fly. It's like, what?
It's a one and done thing, right?
Yeah, it's a one and done.
Yeah, that was all right. I won't try it again, though.
Yeah. If anybody wants to watch this film, I'd liken it to what starts off as a nice, Santa origin film, ends like you've just entered a ketamine hole at a family Christmas dinner. So, so enjoy that.
But like I said, if you love 80s fantasy movies,
yes, yeah,
it's one of those.
it's one of them.
It's one of the 80s fantasy movie through and through. And again, you've kind of just got to watch it with the target demographic, because my son absolutely loved it. Every minute of it, he just sat through the whole thing from start to finish.
You cheated.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's Christmas.
Okay, so that's all we've got on Santa Claus the Movie. So, Andy, what other Santa Claus monstrosity will we be reviewing in our next episode?
So we'll be reviewing The Santa Claus.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
The 1994 Tim Allen starring Santa Claus.
Oh boy, I can't wait. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of the show. Remember to like, share and subscribe. And remember, you can catch the full-length podcasts both on our YouTube page and on any podcast hosting platform such as Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. See you soon.